Just because you don't understand what God is doing, it doesn't mean God isn't working. Just because you can't see the purpose doesn't mean there isn't one. And just because the unexpected happened, it doesn't mean God has abandoned you. Hello, my friends. Come on in. I am always thankful for this time we get to spend together. And if you've been in this space with me before, welcome back. And if this is your first time joining me, I'm glad you found your way here. I want to extend an extra warm welcome to you. I'm Lucy Ann, and here at Amazing by Design, we intentionally take a pause from the noise and the busyness of our everyday lives, and we come together to have honest conversations about how our faith intersects with our daily lives and what it looks like to live connected with God from the inside out without pressure or performance. And around here, we're a little partial to our coffee and our tea. So if you can, grab a mug and let's settle into today's conversation. Today, I want to talk to you about something every one of us has encountered at some point in our lives. And it's this: a season we don't understand. A season where things don't unfold the way we expected. A season where the questions seem much louder than any of the answers. Maybe you've experienced one of those seasons, or maybe you are in the midst of that season right now. You do all the things you know how to do to stay close to God. And then something happened that you never saw coming. Perhaps it was a door that closed, or a relationship changed. Maybe someone dear to you passed on. Or there was a plan that you've been working on for a very long time and it unraveled. Perhaps prayer wasn't answered in the way you had hoped. And suddenly, you're left trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. When those moments happen, most of us ask the same questions. God, where are you? Why did you allow this to happen? What am I supposed to do now? Did I miss you somehow? And underneath all those questions is often a deeper question. Can I trust God when I don't understand? Years ago, I found myself in that very spot. At that time, I was engaged to be married. Everything seemed to be moving in the right direction. We had shared values, shared vision. The people I trusted were in agreement that this was a good fit, and the future, it seemed clear. And then, unexpectedly, the engagement ended. I didn't see it coming. And do you want to know what the hardest part was? It wasn't the breakup itself. The hardest part for me was trying to understand with God what on earth just happened. And suddenly, I found myself wrestling with all the questions. I was asking, God, what happened? Did I misunderstand something? Did I miss you? Then I even turned the questions inward, and I started questioning my own discernment. I started questioning if I could trust what I sensed God was saying to me. These were real struggles. Looking back now, what amazes me isn't that I eventually received clarity. What amazes me is God's tenderness through that entire process. Now I am able to see that He was in places that I couldn't fully see Him in then. And He wasn't judging me or condemning me. He didn't withdraw His presence from me. Rather, He was in the mud pit with me, walking with me every step of the way, patiently, faithfully, and lovingly. And I've come to understand this. Trust with God isn't built because we understand what He is doing. Trust is built by knowing who God is. At that time, I thought the most important thing was finding answers to all my questions. I desperately wanted understanding. I wanted God to make sense of what didn't make sense to me. But over time, I realized something deeper was taking place. God wasn't offended by all my questions, but He wasn't primarily trying to answer them either. Rather, He was teaching me how to trust Him in the middle of all the questions, all the uncertainty. The kind of trust that doesn't depend on having all the answers. The kind of trust that remains steady when life doesn't make sense. The kind of trust that allows you to stay close to God even while you're still asking the questions. One of the greatest misconceptions believers often carry is that they hold on to the thought that trust comes after understanding arrives. But that hasn't been my experience. In fact, many of the most significant seasons of growth in my life happened long before I understood what God was doing. This is what I want you to hear. The understanding came later. The trust came first. And during the seasons where understanding isn't present, it's also common to fall into the trap of wondering, I've been around this same mountain before. Do I really have to walk around it again? Let me explain. I thought that I had already learned to trust God when I walked through a divorce many years earlier. I had learned how to lean on Him. I learned how to trust His promises. I had learned how to keep moving forward. Yet, during this season, it seemed like I was walking around the same mountain. And I had been told before, if you didn't learn the lesson the first time, God will let you walk around the mountain again. Perhaps you've heard that too. But what God has taught me is this: formation is layered. So actually, we're never walking around the same mountain because we aren't the same person we were in the past. What does happen is that life can very well present us with similar situations. Mountains that may look and feel the same. However, the truth is, there are deeper levels of healing, trust, and maturity still unfolding. Our walk with God is always progressing. Right now, you and we're further up the mountain path than we were before. That's formation in action. And that encounter with God changed the way I viewed my journey. I stopped asking, why am I here again? And I began asking questions that would actually move me forward. I started asking God, what are you wanting to teach me at this altitude? Now, that's a very different question. One leads to frustration. Why am I here again? The other leads to formation. What are you wanting to teach me? And perhaps this is the truth that needed to be heard today. Just because you don't understand what God is doing, it doesn't mean God isn't working. Just because you can't see the purpose doesn't mean there isn't one. And just because the unexpected happened, it doesn't mean God has abandoned you. In fact, some of the greatest growth in our lives happens during seasons we would never have chosen for ourselves. Not because the circumstances were good, but because God is good. Not because everything makes sense, but because his character remains trustworthy even when our misunderstanding falls short. And for me, that's what ultimately restored peace. It wasn't an explanation. It wasn't closure. It was an unwavering belief that God is loving, he is for me, and his word remains true. Even when my circumstances don't make sense. Even when my questions remain unanswered. And even when the path feels uncertain. God remains who he has always been. Faithful, present, loving, and steady. And that's the invitation today. To allow God's character to become more trustworthy than your understanding. And that's why I can look back on that season now with amazement. Not because it was easy, not because it was painless, but because I can see God's fingerprints all over it. I can see that he never, not for one moment, left my side. And if you're walking through a season you don't understand right now, or if you're still struggling to understand something that happened a long time ago, I hope you'll hold on to this truth. You do not have to understand everything in order to trust God. Sometimes understanding never fully comes. Nonetheless, God remains faithful. And that's the type of revelations that we hold tightly to here in this space. And if you desire to keep having conversations like this, where we slow down and we step away from the noise, and we learn together how to live from who we truly are, you can find me here each week. And if you feel led to explore this work more deeply, you'll find the link in the show notes where you can connect with me. It's there whenever the time is right for you. In the meantime, here's a thought as you move back into your day. Allow God's character to become more trustworthy than your understanding. And as I wrap up this episode, remember this. You are chosen. You are loved. You are amazing by design.